Well, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. Good afternoon. We are very much looking forward to getting started in just a few minutes and are so honored to have our guest with us today, representing the Winnemem Wintu land back victory in Northern California. But before we get started, the song we played just now is a song that came through a friend of our team, T. Martin, a friend of Brenna's, who wrote that song while they joined thousands of Indigenous water protectors at Standing Rock in 2016. The words, "May this body..."
Sorry, Sarah. Start over.
Oh, fully start over? Okay.
I was muting someone and accidentally muted you. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay, well, we'll try this again.
Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We're really excited to get started and are so honored to have our guests with us today who are representing the Winnemem Wintu land back victory in Northern California. But before we get started, we wanted to just spend a moment together. The song we played just now is a song that came through a friend of our team, a friend of Brenna's, T. Martin, who wrote that song while they joined thousands of Indigenous water protectors at Standing Rock in 2016. And the words, "May this body be a bridge for the healing of this land," were inspired by a Palestinian activist, Saeed Abdullah, who was also there as a water protector. This song feels more than fitting at this time when so many of us are grieving the catastrophic and completely avoidable loss of life in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Israel. And as organizers of this event, bringing in folks from all across the country who care about Indigenous rights and sovereignty, who care about the health and restoration of the land and the waters, who care about repairing the harms of violent colonialism, we at Nuns and Nuns Land Justice feel we must acknowledge the ongoing genocide of Palestinians and destruction of Gaza and the West Bank, and the further endangerment of Israeli hostages, as well as call on all of us to do our part to take action in demanding safety, freedom, equal rights for everyone living in the region, be they Palestinian or Israeli, be they Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. And we join our friends at Jewish Voice for Peace in saying that never again means never again for anyone, and in demanding a ceasefire now, an end to funding and supply of weapons, and instead the earnest deployment of needed humanitarian aid. As we start this event, it's just so important to acknowledge that the same mentality and forces that occupied and colonized Turtle Island, what Patrick Wolf calls destroying to replace, is at play when we look at imperialism and settler colonialism all over the world. And in fact, the struggle for Indigenous sovereignty and Palestinian liberation are inextricably linked. The same papal bulls, the doctrine of discovery, that justified land theft in what is now the US and undergirds US property law today, was in fact partly written to also justify the killing of Arab and Muslim pagans and Saracens and the stealing of land in what is now Palestine and Israel. So tomorrow, Congress is voting on whether to send $14 billion in military aid to Israel. And I implore everyone at this event to look up the numbers of your representatives and ask that they sign on to the current ceasefire resolution and humanitarian aid for Gaza instead of supplying more bombs and weapons. There are links in the chat where you can call your reps and government officials after this webinar ends. So with that, may our bodies be a bridge for the healing of this land and of all land that has endured the harms of extractive capitalism and colonial violence. And may the rivers that we and under the leadership of Indigenous activists everywhere actively protect and restore the rivers, may they cleanse the greed from our hands, and may we be complicit no more in the ongoing and intertwined projects of genocide and ecocide. So thank you for letting me speak to that. And just with a few moments of silence, we can send our love and solidarity to all those in harm's way. So today, the work of land justice requires all of us to take part in restoring land and relationships with those who have been forcibly removed and dispossessed of their homelands, their sovereignty, their culture, and lifeways. And today we'll hear from 4 people with different relationships to land back, who each played their role in this victory we're going to talk about. There is so much to celebrate and witness in this growing movement of land back, rematriation, and land reparations. And we give our thanks to the leadership of Indigenous communities, Black communities, and other communities of color who are right now creating the path towards a just and sustainable future. And we also want to affirm that there's an important role that white folks and descendants of settlers can play in that movement of repair and right relationship. So with that, I would like to invite our 4 speakers, Chief Caleen Sisk, Michael Preston, Cassandra Ferrera, and Ann Symens-Bucher to join me here in the spotlight as we discuss their incredible land back victory of over 1,100 acres of Winnemem Wintu land in Northern California, which just happened like in the last month. So we're so grateful and honored that you're here with us. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with some of you again, and it's wonderful to meet you, Chief Caleen. If you could each take just a minute to introduce yourselves, who you are and your relationship to this land back project, we'll then get started with some questions as a panel. So I'll invite Chief Caleen, you to begin, and Michael, followed by Cassandra and Ann.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. All right, then. I am the 5th leader of my people since the beginning of California. And in saying that, it's like there's a lot of history that's passed on. There's a lot of way of life that we carry that make Winnemem people. And there's also a lot of struggle to continue on in the future to come, and trying to ensure that the Winnemem Wintu people will continue as that people, not just as Californians or not just as Americans, but also carrying on what makes the Winnemem tribe separate from all the other California tribes, and what responsibility that means to Mother Earth, to the rivers, to what we're responsible for, just as certain species are responsible for parts of the balance of nature. So our tribes invested in the balance of nature. And so we have been here for, like I said, before California was even thought of to be a state, before America was ever discovered. And our histories go back to taking care of the land, the waters, the animals, the birds, knowing things that need to be done for this area. And in doing that, there is a collective requirement, I should say, of leadership to be inclusive of moving that forward, and at the same time balancing the challenges that have faced us. You know, my Grams was the leader before me. She was a leader for 68 years. meaning at the turn of the century, coming out of a genocide time and into a industrial time of building dams and the reduction of our population to hang on to what was left. What do we still have? What are we still responsible for and to? And so it's been a hard time for California Indians overall throughout the state, and the discovery of gold, and then the water empire of California was established, and the dams were, sought to be the way of life for everybody. But we're still here. We're still singing to the spring. We're still going to our sacred places and praying. We're still doing our dances. We're still teaching our younger people, what our obligations are as Winnemem people. And we're at a time that it's really necessary that we are not unrecognized, as the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the federal government would say to everybody, is that we are not recognized tribal people, but we are the only tribal people on the McCloud River. We're the only people that come down this waterway to the Sacramento River. We're that people that really moved some stuff in the beginning of history. And so it's kind of like BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, got amnesia in the 80s and decided that they would create a list of all of those tribes they could remember. And they didn't remember us, as they didn't remember many tribes in California. So the population of California Indians went from, in the 1970s, 300,000 California Indians. By 1980, it was 28,000 BIA Indians were left. And so many of the tribes in California that survived genocide, the outright killing and getting paid for the killings of the Indians, then became another erasure by the pen of another kind of genocide of becoming invisible. And so many of the California Indians suffer that today. So that's where we're at, So I don't want to take too much more time, so go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Caleen. Michael, Cassandra, Ann, could you just briefly introduce yourselves and your relationship to the project, and then I'll have Michael and Chief Caleen stay on for some initial questions about this project.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, or morning. Michael Preston is my name. I'm Winnemem Wintu tribal member, son of Caleen Sisk. I'm a part of the general team of the tribe, we might say. There's different roles that we do. One of them is definitely going for this land back project and different things that we have to do to navigate that process. I've kind of, we navigate that through a nonprofit that we formed for this specific project. And it's actually a unincorporated association with church status that is allowing us to move through these realms of now, the politics, you might say, policy, and different real estate worlds more efficiently with the help of our other team members who are also on this call. But just wanted to say thank you for bringing us on today, and grateful to be here.
Hey everyone, my name is Cassandra Ferrera, and I am with the Center for Ethical Land Transition. And I have, along with the attorneys from the Sustainable Economies Law Center, got to be on a team that helped to navigate the real estate world and the legal world, and in support of the Winnemem Land Back. So we'll talk more about that later, but that's how I'm here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ann Symens-Bucher, and I am have the honor of being connected to this project through Canticle Farm, and my community mate Nydia Garcia, who for years has been part of the Run for Salmon and close to Chief Caleen and the Winnemem Wintu, and we were invited into the support role of helping with the fiscal sponsorship. So that's my role. Thank you.
Well, thanks for sharing those quick introductions. Anne and Cassandra will bring you in a minute. And so, but for just now, I'd love to return to what you had started talking about, Chief Caleen, around just the history of this land, a history of your people. I imagine there's a number of people on this call who don't know about the Winnemem Wintu people, and if there's anything that you would like to cover that you didn't already speak to about who the Winnemem Wintu are, your history, where you live, the relationships that make up that community, and kind of, yeah, just like what's real for you right now as a community. Oh, and sorry, you are muted.
Okay. Our leadership, like I was saying, is we're the fifth group of leaders of people who are taking care of the Winnemem way of life. And we also come from a very strong people that were here and dealing with the changes and the challenges and making the best of what decisions could be made. And I'm saying that because, we went from like 14,000 Winnemem people on the McLeod River to 395 by the turn of the century. By 1910, there were only 310 of us left at that time, which was my grandparents. And then by 1930, they had made the plans to flood our river. And in 1945, they completely filled the lake, Shasta. And all of the young people at that time were sent off to boarding schools in the 1930s. And from the boarding schools, they went into the service to defend this country during World War II. But by the time they came home to the river, there was nothing but a lake there, and everybody else owned everything else on the river. And so this land that we're sitting on now, my grams acquired this land. It was an allotment piece of land, and it's by river. It's 6 miles from the river, from McLeod River, even though by driving it's like 40 miles away by the road. So we, in addition to that, this area comes down from Buyumpuyuk, which is Mount Shasta, and there are sacred mountains on the way and that pathway, which includes this land sits right under Bear Mountain. And Bear Mountain is a very sacred mountain in relationship to the tribe and what do we do and kind of practices that mountain gives to the tribe. And so we're still in a very sacred area of our lands. And continuing on, that the Winnemem people, the Winnemem Wintu people, they were very into finding out what's happening. They're the ones who went to Washington, D.C. to say what happened to our treaty land. We all signed treaties with the United States, and there were only 18 treaties in California, and found out that they were not ratified by Congress. And so there started the lawsuit of the land taken or stolen. And that lawsuit started in 1928. It ended in 1972. And for 8 years, because the California Indians won that lawsuit, we were all considered Indians on or near a reservation for all BIA services in California, since they negated to make the lands and the treaty lands in California. And so, but by 1980, the Bureau of Indian Affairs came back and said, we're going to make a list of federally recognized tribes that we work with. And for California, that meant the homeless Indian lands that were set up in the 1920s for homeless Indians. Well, many of the tribes like mine were not homeless Indians. We had our culture, our traditions, we had our rivers, and we had a way of life. And so we didn't migrate to these homeless Indian lands. We preferred to stay on the river. But in doing that, by 1980, the government then was able to whittle out only 28,000 Indians were on homeless Indian lands. And there were 3 reservations that were created, like Hoopa, Rincon, and Soboba, by executive orders. But all of the treaty tribes were not on these little reservations, or these little rancherias, as they call them, because they were like 20 acres, 10 acres. They were very small pieces of land that normally water would not run through, normally that you wouldn't be able to grow gardens on or anything like that. It was people's idea that nobody wanted that land. So that's what the Indian people got. And in doing that, it created this, what I call a United Nations discriminatory practice against traditional people or indigenous peoples of a country, because people don't know what unrecognized means. That means every time we hold a ceremony, it's against the law, because we're not Indians. We're not a tribe in the eyes of the federal government. And as long as the federal government looks at us that way, the state government cannot do anything about it, apparently. And so every time we go to our sacred places, every time we do anything, we don't have the right to continue. But, it's forced us to have to do that in our Bathos Chonas, our women's coming of age ceremonies. We've gone up against the Forest Service because they're the ones who are holding our land, as well as other landowners who own our sacred rocks or whatever. But these ceremonies, if we're going to continue to be a tribe, then we have to have that back. We have to practice that. Or we have to agree that we're no longer going to be the Winnemem Wintu, that we're going to put that down, and we're just going to just say that we used to be. We used to be that, our people used to go to those rocks, or we used to do that. But so far, we have not gotten there yet. And we don't want to be there, because, we're responsible to the Creator and to even the salmon for things on our river. And as long as we're here, that's the way that I've been taught, is that they taught you these songs to go and sing them there. And if we can continue to do that, even though, other people own our land now, they own those places, they don't want you on there, they have fences up, it says keep out, that sort of thing. And so it's a decision that we have to make, as to be lawbreakers or give up our traditions. And most of the time, people owning land up here, because we're so remote in a rural country, that nobody really notices if you did go on that land, or if you did, go over that fence. And so it's pretty much kind of made us to do that. We have to do that to access those sites, so that our people can continue to carry those responsibilities. And we're still fighting that. We've gone to the UN to complain about the discriminatory treatment. Our religious denial that because we're not considered Indians of the United States, we don't get to access all of the laws that were created for the Indians of the United States, like the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act or the Indian Child Welfare Act. We can't protect our children from being adopted out because we can't utilize those laws. So it's kind of messed up in that way. But I think that my grams and my elders, the people who taught us these things and who left us here with this sacred fire that we have in our village, that other people around us are now beginning to understand a whole lot more about nature and about our responsibilities as humans, that we should do something, that we should come together. You know, and in our spring on Buyumpuyuk went dry, and that was a sign. You know, it's like, well, the Winnemem, we're not able to save Mount Shasta, Buyumpuyuk, the spring on our own, because there's so many other people who are using and regulating the use of those sacred places. And so from that time on, we had to open up, which was a big deal for us to open up, because you realize that we are not protected by the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act, which allowed tribes to come out from underground and do their ceremonies the way that they wanted to. We still don't have that right, but we are assuming under the spirit of that law, we still have to prove that we could use that law, that it's something that we should be allowed. We should have that right. And so we began that prayer, you know, praying about water, because that spring on Mount Shasta went dry. And through that prayer came the Run for Salmon, which is a prayer journey that's supposed to teach the people to be better stewards of water and land. And so we've been doing that for quite a while now. And in our 7th year, a lot of things changed. And of course, our belief is that every 7 years, there is a different way of thinking, you know, from a baby to 7 years old, or from 7 to 14, or 14, you know, it's like all of the conditions change as we grow. And so in the 7th year of our Run for Salmon, we had accumulated a whole lot of people who want to help. They want to understand it. They want to write about it. They want to talk about it. They want to, you know, teach other people about it. We have some classroom teachers that put together some curriculum for younger kids in different schools. Even schools in Hawaii show these videos about, you know, the tribe and the salmon and the work that lots of people are doing and coming together to make things happen, is that prayer journey. And so I feel good about, you know, all of the folks that came on. In fact, Anne was talking about Nadia. Nadia was a student in Oregon, at Oregon State, when she heard us talk, and then right that next ceremony, I got a ticket from the Forest Service for $10,000 for doing the ceremony on the river and having a boat which wasn't mine, but was needed for the elder women to go across the river to see the young lady. And Nadia and some of the kids in Oregon, because we had gone up there and we had established a run for salmon on the Mackenzie River too, because Mackenzie River needs salmon and they weren't coming. And so she was part of that group and was almost a graduate student at that time, and had tried to figure out how to save me from prison because it was like $10,000 or a year in prison. It's like, oh, I know I don't have $10,000. But that's the pressure that we go under. It's like, who would think we would be put upon like that? But the Forest Service at that time had called in like 6 different forestries to observe us, to send canine dog units through the campground, river boats that had full metal jackets on, like we were gonna destroy something, or we were building a bomb to, and we were holding a ceremony for a young lady. That's what we were doing. But we've come to, it's deciphering, like looking at all of the things that are going on, and like even in Standing Rock, when Red Fawn got with that guy who was a FBI agent, and Red Fawn went to prison for it, but nothing happened to him who brought the gun, because he was part of the planting. And so that those kind of teachings, when we're doing things, we have to be really prayerful about. We have to really look at what happens, what can happen, and the people who come to help you, can bring that right into what you're doing. And so it's always like a risk, no matter what. But for the Run for Salmon, lots of people are like changing their life. They looked at the water, they felt the water that comes from the mountain. They seen how crystal clear it is when it comes out of the mountain and it comes down down into the Shasta Lake. Then it changes. When it comes out, in Redding all the way to Red Bluff, you can still kind of see it's sort of clean, but by the time it gets to Sacramento, lots of people are appalled of what happened to the water that we just saw a few days ago. And now even further from Sacramento, all the way down to the Delta, and the changes that, are happening to the water, kind of helps people understand, that we've got to do better. We've got to have a little more regulations on who gets to dump the ag water back into the river, who gets to dump fracking water back into the river, because we're all dependent on this river. And so I think that the Run for Salmon has helped a whole lot of people. And in doing that, we have met a lot of people through our journey of coming into different communities. But on every confluence, we try to put that prayer down, because those confluences where rivers come together are so powerful and so prayerful and so good, that events can happen, that things can change. For the fish that go up the Feather River or the American River, that come up the Sacramento and go off different tributaries, that we try to address that. We try to put songs down. We have all other people, wherever they're from, to put songs down, because this is a worldly event. This is not just a California, it's not just a Winnemem. Things are happening around the world where water is, trying to teach the people. And if we could change those kinds of things, where we can recognize a teaching instead of, well, we need another dam. If we're going to fix this drought, we need another dam. We need to build the dam higher, and that's where people are not educated about water. All they know is it comes out of their faucet, they turn it on. And if the government says that they need another dam, then they're all behind, let's build another dam. But the Shasta Dam, these dams they have a life expectancy. So the Shasta Dam is like 80 years old, and they want to build it higher. The PG&E Dam is like almost 100 years old. And all of these are coming to its end, right, of the construction ability of that dam. But also, they have not really let the public know that the waterway itself, like the Shasta Dam, they had copper smelter mines under the lake, that they had hydro mined a lot of the mountains where iron ore is just leaking out of the mountain, and all of that is under the lake. and that the fish in Shasta Lake already have mercury poisoning, but they don't want to put that out there because it's a recreational lake, and that most people are not going to eat enough fish out of Shasta to harm them. So they don't really have any warning signs up at all for people. But all of these dams have that same kind of sedimentation at the bottom of those places, and they don't have any remedy for fixing that. And so it is for us, the people, come together and start planning our own plans and looking at and teaching ourselves what needs to be done, or having it be realized what we could do, what we can ask for as a people, and that's going to take everybody in California to change the direction that the water board or the reclamation is taking. But if we follow the salmon, we believe that all the water will be good if we follow the salmon. So I'm going to end on that note and let.
Thank you so much, just for sharing all of that context and the experience that really helps us understand the broader situation that this story exists within. Michael, I'd love to turn to you and ask, we definitely want to move towards talking more about the transaction itself, how this land back victory happened. But before we do that, I would love to hear from you, as a young person or a younger person and young leader in your community, what does this land represent for you? What vision and dreams do you hold for it? And also if you want to share anything also related to how the Run for Salmon also led to this moment, or and what that is for anyone who might still not quite know what that is.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So just, I don't know, there's a lot there's a lot to say about this whole thing. There's so much to say. I don't really know how to word it all properly. There's it's an immense opportunity though for us that we've kind of co-created, of course, over the years of just activist work and protecting Mount Shasta and protecting the waters on Mount Shasta, and how the ceremonies, we've been following them since time immemorial. But mostly that's kind of where it all comes from to me. It's not necessarily the political stuff that we do, but it's more of the ceremonial work that we do, of how this stuff happens and the portal opening that kind of goes through, and the creating of energetics, you might say, which is how Run for Salmon came about, and how just some of our prophecies are read, and how we continue them basically into the now is kind of how I see it. That's how we see we have spiritual help in that sense. And in the land, we're just kind of vessels in it, and the land and the salmon, and so many things that want this kind of thing to happen. They're they need it to happen. They're more so this is going to happen. And we're of course, however you need us to move, we're going to do that. And we're on the team. We're kind of, that's how I move with it. And it's kind of goes up against impossibilities in that sense, and miracle kind of things that kind of go through divine intervention, this kind of stuff is what has happened. And including this land coming up for sale is definitely seen as that to me in my eyes, but also that this is what's going to happen. This is what wanted to happen. And we just said yes to it. We're gonna meet that halfway in prayer, do our work as human beings to do that. And not sure how, but it kind of, and it happened really fast too. But jumping back, it was kind of an impossibility. This land is coming up for the sale for the first time in 75 years. Never knew if it was ever going to come up on sale, but it actually did. But it's always been a dream. I remember always looking back in our backyard and wow, I wish we had that land right there. And looking back to our left and wow, I wish we had that land. That would be so amazing. I don't know. We've spent years just thinking that thought, and so long. And so the fact that it came online forced us into a action moment and moving really quickly action moment and not knowing how to actually do it and thinking like $2 million was an overwhelming amount of like money to fundraise and for like 2 or 3 months. But we kind of got inspired. I got inspired from Sorgorte Land Trust and how they were able to raise funds for their piece of property and then the quick amount of time that they were able to do that. So that was inspiration for me for sure. And thinking like, wow, it can happen. And then we kind of like such a long story. I'm not sure what to actually include, but like, you know, due to the fact that we're a federally unrecognized tribe, we have to do, you know, we have to go through other means to make this stuff work. And with the help of Center for Ethical Land Transition and also SELC, Sustainable Economies Law Center, we were able to form this nonprofit 501c3 with unincorporated association with church status, which is a new thing for us for sure to hold land titles into, and just develop the mechanisms to make it work. And we had a good fundraising team, and it's just the dream, you know. And like we have lots of plans for this place. There's lots of, I think what it mostly comes down to is kind of like waking up Bear Mountain and using it and allowing it to help us and more than that, like we're the leaders in that, not necessarily, but like we're it wants to help us, and we kind of have to let it and kind of go with it. But it's coming back online, like connecting that. There's something about the ceremonies that opens up that place that frees up other places, or frees up our hearts, frees up frees up like the healing, like rhythm or something like this. So we have to build this place to along those lines, and that's what I'm looking forward to. So that's restoring the waters, restoring all the habitats for the waters, for the birds, for everything, and then making it spiritually aligned so that it's promoting healing, like of all the things, and including up into the spiritual world. And the vastness of that is the job. No small undertaking by any means, but that's the potential of it, and what we're gonna go towards. And that's what we mean by like a quote unquote eco village.
Mm-hmm. I like your definition of eco village. It's got a few more layers of depth to it, I think, than most people would assume. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I'm just really with you in the prayerful approach to healing with land, healing through land, healing through community, healing with community. I'd love to bring Cassandra into this conversation, as well as Anne. I'm gonna add you to the mix here. So you mentioned, you know, this land coming online. I guess, you know, I don't know if Cassandra, you want to share first, like how did you get involved in this project? What were some of the first things you did when this land became available? And you know, I'm curious how folks found out, or if it was just, you know, people were looking on Zillow, or like what the means was.
It's beautiful to be here and be in the sharing of this beautiful story. I had been invited 2 years ago in November of 2021 to a team of folks that were sort of being rehydrated. Like some folks had already been working together to support the Winnemem village that Chief Caleen spoke of. But there was this like, okay, everybody's getting back together, something's happening. And at first, I was called in to explore another land place that was actually about maybe 45 minutes away from the village, and we explored it and looked into it. But then Chief Caleen went back and prayed about it and said, actually, no, that's not our right place. What we need to do is actually focus closer to home and focus on our village. And I I was like, okay, great. So then we started examining what was happening around the village. And it turned out that that land that Poem was speaking about, that throughout his childhood he'd been looking at, had actually been on the market, and no one had, it had not been, so quote, sold. But right when we were putting our interest on it, it had come off the market because one of the folks that was on title was actually dying. And so they had the family took it off the market, and it felt like it was being put like into a holding pattern for a period of time, because their family was going through an important process. But then the Winnemem family and all of the friends that were working together also was going through a process. And so we actually had to wait for a while that family kind of sorted through what they were going to do, and pray a lot that what they wanted to do was still come back and put that land, back up for sale. And so I, for a long time, was just literally just staying in touch every week. So, we're still interested when you get ready. And it was just a line of communication, just staying in relationship with the person who had been their agent. Meanwhile, like Poem was talking about, the Sustainable Economies Law Center team was working to help Chief and Poem and the Winnemem Wintu come up with a title holding entity. So like they had already had a 501c3, but they had discovered some of the limitations of a 501 in terms of that they couldn't operate actually the way that they culturally wanted and needed to. And so the legal team listened deeply into Chief talk about the Winnemem cosmology and how their decisions are made and how their governance works. And it was a really beautiful translation that then the legal team went and said, okay, well, in order for you to get to keep being how you are, but yet have a title holding entity, we think it's best that you form an unincorporated association with church status. And everybody is all excited, and this is beautiful, important discovery. And turns out title companies don't know how to work with unincorporated associations. And so then I, as the real estate agent and consultant, had to go into a strategy of how do we then build up the title company's awareness of unincorporated associations, because that's what was most culturally affirmative for this tribe. And so that's still a project that's underway. And that's partly why Annie was needed to be brought into the project as well, is because that legal form works for the tribe, but having that translate into these colonial systems of title holding and real estate industry and all of that is a learning curve for the title companies. And but the really good, actually coming back to the story of then what happened is that right when they were there's a lot of fundraising that happened. We knew we wanted these 5, at that point we thought there were 5 parcels. And then it turned out that there were 6, and it was even more acreage. And then the Nuria says, gosh, we've been waiting and waiting for so long. We're about to go and run for salmon. Can we just make them an offer? Like, we've raised enough money. Can we just make them an offer? And of course I said, why not? Why didn't I think of that? And so we started the process of making a verbal offer. And then they all went off on Run for Salmon and prayed. And while I was negotiating this verbal offer with the folks, the title holders, and then it turned out that they would accept the verbal offer, and they would sell it to us off market. So they wouldn't go back on the market and they would just get into contract with us. So all of that waiting and preparing and praying, all of that just, it finally, we had a strategy and they said yes. And so there's a lot more to that, but I've said a lot, and I want to bring Annie into the story because it was really beautiful the way that that Canticle Farm stepped in and participated in such a key way.
Thank you, Cassandra. I feel so humbled by the whole thing. It actually is going to get me to start crying because it's just been so moving to play it feels like a small role, and I love that we were able to be part of it and to assist with being a fiscal sponsor to make this piece happen. Just a short, like a bridge, like to be a bridge to help deal with the admin piece of the funds in order for this purchase to happen. And again, I want to just I think there's so much. It's an answer to prayer, and so many people wanting to just this beautiful moment of rematriation and people coming together in whatever way it takes to return land. So like there's a part of me that just feels, it's like dumbfounded by the amount of money. And similarly in our neighborhood where we have been getting property, off the speculative market, the amount of money that these properties, cost, it's heart-wrenching and heartbreaking in a lot of ways. And, right there in that heartbreak is there's just so much profound gratitude and joy to be able to return this land. I want to thank again, and mention Nydia, my community mate, who has so instrumental in this and in being a bridge between Canticle Farm and the Winnemem Wintu and Segorite as well, and helping us to learn what we didn't know. And so that's again just a journey that is very humbling for me, and as someone who's raised in connected to the Franciscan tradition and the my own ancestors coming to the land that was the Huchun village of the Lishanaloni people back in the 1800s. I just am so motivated to be part of transformation and healing. So it's been, again, I feel deeply honored to have been able to support in this small way with our community and our 501c3. And the last thing I'll just say is I had a lot of mixed feelings about having a 501c3. I'm a Catholic worker, so we didn't, I was, when we were starting the community, I wasn't really interested in that. But there were two reasons to be able to do it, that we chose to do it, and one of them was to hold land and to be able to fundraise, through grants. But also, right from the start, it felt to me like if we could share that, be a fiscal sponsor to other organizations and support work in that way, that would be a good reason to do it. And so it's just been a profound honor and joy to be part of this. Really grateful. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you for the risks you've taken and the stretches and, putting on a new legal entity in order to be an ally working in solidarity with the Winnemem. And, I do think if there's anything else you want to say about like the role of faith in the faith walk you've been on, in repair, I know there's Franciscan sisters on and other religious communities who, would probably love to hear anything else you want to share about just what it is to kind of stretch oneself into a new shape of relationship with one's history, with one's place, with one's tradition, and with communities that have been historically kept separate.
Yeah, again, it brings up a lot of emotion for me. I was raised in a very social justice conscious community in East Oakland. In the winds of change of Vatican II, and I grew up so shaped and formed by the beautiful spirituality of that. It took me to the Catholic Worker. I lived with Dorothy Day. My whole formation has been toward justice and peace, and all those great and amazing Catholic radicals who formed me, and so much of my activism was shaped by that, and in terms of anti-war and nuclear weapons and sanctuary movement and all that. And through all that formation, there was never any awareness about indigenous sovereignty or what had, happened in the lands where I lived, much less through the tradition, the very mission system, the Franciscan mission system. And I grew up going to those missions. The friars were still at several of them. I have 5 Franciscan priests in my family. They were places we visited because the friars were there, and they were sacred places to me. So to try to reconcile that, to understand, that history and the genocide, and to be, waking up to it this late in my life and in my own formation has been hugely humbling. And so I also want to have compassion for it, because, for me anyway, feeling guilty or defensive just keeps me inactive. So I want to say it's never too late for us to wake up and to learn and to figure out what is our role, and if we each do what is ours to do, at the end of his life, Francis invited his followers to, do what was theirs to do, find that and go do that. And so Canticle Farm is that's my soul work and my niche, and I want it to be in service to healing, because so much of what we see, when we see it now in Palestine, like we continue to transmit the trauma if we don't transform it. So the work that has emerged in our community to heal across these differences, and to address like the harm of racism and sexism and genocide of land and people, has been so deeply meaningful and profound. And I know it's the work that I will be doing for the rest of my life. And so I want to be in service to that. And it's so meaningful, to be able to do that, and to be able to show up and say, I apologize. And we, every week at Canticle Farm at our liturgy, we have an acknowledgement and commitment, which really is inspired by the penitential rite, that I grew up saying every week at Mass, and we say, we name that we live in a nation created by enslavement and genocide of people, the taking and destruction of their land, and the justification of these acts by the Christian doctrine of discovery, white supremacy, manifest destiny, and the divine right of kings. And we end by, we call on the ancestors, and we ask forgiveness for what we and they have done and failed to do, and that with their help we can transform rather than transmit the trauma. And that prayer that I say every week is my strength and oxygen to keep doing this work, that whatever I can with the rest of my life and my connections and relationships, that I can use that in service toward justice, just and apologizing and naming and doing whatever I possibly can. So I just feel so honored and privileged to be able to do that work, and I just invite everyone on board for it, because it's, the rewards are so deeply worth everything. I don't even know. I'm running out of words, but I see people nodding their heads, and I know Louise especially is nodding her head. So I just want to thank Caleen and Palm, and for allowing us to support this, and we're here to do whatever we can, moving forward. And it's been such a joy also to be inspired by Cassandra. And I never thought I was going to be somebody buying property, so we laugh about that now, because you find yourself doing what is yours to do, even though you didn't know it was going to be what you're going to do. And so it's been just great to fall in love with everybody, and I invite everyone to do that too. Thank you.
I love that. Falling in love with everybody, informing our next steps. Thank you so much, Anne, for sharing that. I'm sure it's very moving for those in the audience. I know we're seeing requests for that prayer. I personally know that Canticle Farm has incredible liturgies. So maybe we can connect about sharing that as well. So that everyone can be fueled, resourced for the journey of what it is to walk in solidarity with this movement. I'd love to just ask maybe a couple more questions before we take a moment and open up for broader Q&A. Cassandra, you've represented a number of Indigenous tribes and communities, grassroots groups, as they try to recover stolen homelands. And I guess I'd just love to ask you to share a little bit about how these kinds of real estate transactions can sometimes be different than what people know about real estate or real estate transactions. What are the particular obstacles that you and patterns you notice that everyday folks might not understand are playing out in these homeland recovery efforts? And if you want to continue on just kind of this path that we've been on with Anne, how important is it for to have deep solidarity and allyship from non-Native folks, and what are some of those roles that people can play in supporting land back?
Oh my goodness, your first question is got such a long answer in terms of how when you're doing such deep it's like beyond code switching, like the cultural translation, the language, the cosmology, like the entire way of speaking about land, about a transition, is about what's at stake and who, and then what and why is just such a vastly in some ways different worlds, and yet that's what we're really attempting to do with the Center for Ethical Land Transition, is hold an ethos that centers Indigenous cosmologies and translate into real estate strategy, because we have to. And so one of the questions about why did they still need a fiscal sponsor, we weren't 100% sure whether we were going to encounter rural racism with these neighbors. We weren't 100% sure that if they knew it was the Winnemem Wintu doing that work of acquiring, if they would feel any kind of way about it. And it was such important land because of its location that we didn't even want to risk it. So we also needed a fiscal sponsor to withstand the real estate process, because Salmon, the unincorporated association with church status, is still gaining its sort of legal strength to be able to go through the real estate process. And that is not because of Salmon or the strength of the community. It's because of the lack of understanding that the real estate and title company world has. And so there's a need for a strategy, because the real estate process can be stressful and kind of tight in a way. And so, but the good news is at the end of it, you have the land is in the hands 100%. Now of the people. There's not a long lingering relationship with folks who may not understand. And so it was incredible. Annie's so, humble and saying this little role she played. And like Palm said, it does feel like sometimes we're on a team of 50 people, there's an amazing amount of teamwork happening, but to have a 501 stand in and say, not only will we receive these millions of dollars on your behalf to pay the ransom for your land, as one of my mentors, Rachel, uses that word ransom. We're going to pay this ransom. But, Canticle was willing to receive that and go through the real estate process and be the one on the contract and deal with, that process, which is really important. And we needed it not only because of Salmon getting more sturdy in the eyes of title companies, but we needed it because we didn't want to take that risk. Actually, we wanted to sail through that important passage. And I was just personally so touched that Annie, you're just absolute clarity. You're like, oh, that's what needs to be done. We do that, no problem. Let's go.
Yeah, really, really beautiful. I'm curious if each of you, this might be more than we're able to chew off, because I do want to leave some moments for questions, and if you have questions, please do share them with Amy Walsh, who's supporting with tech, and share them in the chat with her. I'm curious if each of you can share what's one thing that has been just so life-giving for you in this process. Like, what's been one thing that's been kind of a surprise, life-giving thing? And also, like, what's been a challenge? Knowing, Cassandra, as there are particular challenges to real estate transactions that are seeking the return of homelands, of Indigenous lands. So I wonder, maybe we can go Anne, Cassandra, Michael, and then end with you, Chief Caleen.
Well, the first thing I just want to say, be happy for people to see that acknowledgement and commitment. It's on our website, and I'm having a little technical problem here with typing, but if maybe Sarah, you could just put canticlefarmoakland.org, and you can click there and find that prayer and commitment. And happy to share it and have as many people as possible saying it together, praying it together. I really don't have anything to say about challenges. It was just an honor. I mean, it was paperwork, and it was going to the bank, and it was, clicking on, you sign documents and you click, click. So yeah, but it was, I had, there's something that happens inside of me when these things come, and I do feel like it's grace. I just knew this was going to happen. And, right from the start, I just felt a deep calm, because it really felt like a prayer. And so it's just like, okay, we line up, we do the thing that is ours to do, and we come together. And so it felt so grace-filled and so smooth, and just amazingly humbling to see so many foundations and people showing up with large, amounts of money to raise $3 million, and to do it, so quickly. So it was just grace, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I echo that. There's not a lot of low points, except sometimes the stress that I felt, because I so wanted it to work out, and sometimes that pressure of the control that title holders have in the decision making that they could make that might not have gone in our favor. So there was certainly some stress there, but I think it's really way balanced by the like, you all got to hear Palm and Chief talk, and so getting to be in those spaces where it's made really clear why we're doing this, and the opportunity to get to have such a deep prayer as part of the work is so powerful and life affirming in so many ways.
For me, I think part of the the best moments for me has been just to witness the community come together and just the vast amount of people that have come together for that. Like rallying for us, and just kind of the humility of just having so many people support us has been a real eye opener, real like upliftment. Sometimes when we like kind of get down, kind of get like not sure if this is going to happen, or you kind of even like some kind of like what do you call it, like I don't know, like I just like a doubt, you might say, like if we're like gonna, if this is the right time to actually ask this kind of thing. And like I have an issue with asking for things like this, such a big thing, but we have had such a team with us, and just people rallying, be support has been just a real, yeah, just real humbling for me. I'm not sure how else to put it. It's been great. It's been real. It's like we have a new community now. And a vast amount of community, and like it's hopeful for other land back movements and other it's like it kind of restores your faith in like humanity in a certain sense. So in a big way for us, for sure. We're like, wow, I don't know, it makes you kind of cry. You're like, wow, I can't believe we're supported like that. Like, wow, thank you so much to so many beautiful people that have helped us. And some of the issues that have come up, I guess, has been the paperwork. Yes, definitely the waiting game. There was like a moment when the lady who was selling us the property kind of went silent for a minute and wasn't sure if we wasn't sure if it was going to happen. She's going back and forth with her family, and she kind of disappeared off the radar. And we was like, oh, is this going to happen? Like, we're not, I hope so. But there was a moment that we were like, wow, I hope it does. And just like, just dealing with yeah, just kind of like the real estate part. I mean, I know Cassandra took the bulk of that, but like we're kind of like in it on a roundabout way. And in that, I was like, dang, what a beast that world is. And like needs to be kind of a updated kind of thing. I'm like, wow, what kind of makes you realize like how old school it is in a certain sense, like how old the laws are, and like how they need to be updated. And that was kind of a eye opener for me.
Yeah, that all of that is not even, you can't even think about all of the things that came together and why they came together. You know, it's like we had been looking into this land back, and looked at Flowing Waters, another land piece up in Weed, and Cassandra shows up to help us look at that land. And we finally decide that it's too far away from our village, and it's not really in our traditional territory, even though it's for sale and it could be some sort of a moneymaker at some point. It's not really what we need. It's gonna separate us in some way. And so, but but I guess that we did that so that we could get Cassandra on our team. That's why that happened. Not that we would have done that. And then starting off with a smaller piece of land, that was 75,000, 7 acres on the waterway of Dry Creek, which we're trying to bring the salmon back up Dry Creek. So one thought was to try to get a hold of all the land that's on Dry Creek so that there'd be less landowners that would oppose salmon coming up the creek. And so then it was like land next door went up for sale. And so then we're asking Cassandra, I was like, hey, could you look into that property that was for sale next door? Because a few years back, before they subdivided it into parcels, it was one huge piece for like $1.5 million or something like that. One huge property that they tried to sell, and it never sold. And so finding out that they had subdivided it and it was coming up for sale, and that there was a chance, and it's like, well, how much is that one? It's like, well, it's going to be $1.5 million. And then later adding the additional property to it, jumped it up to 2 million. And it's like, okay, how do we do this? But I think what was most amazing for me is that when we came to the event at Canticle, and it was a fundraiser kind of event, and that night there was there was like $200,000 raised for the land that night, which was like an eye-opener for me. It's like, wow, right there, things are changing in California in people, and the relationships of tribes, because we're here in the North State. We grew up here. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of people who were the grandchildren of the people who killed our people to get their lands. And so there's a misnomer of like, you guys lost the war, so hey, that's all there is to it. It's like, too bad for you, good for us. The attitude is that, and that you guys didn't pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. It's like, well, we don't really have bootstraps. We have moccasins. And we have different way of thinking about things, about even getting to this point of ownership of land is a difficult thing for the tribe to get to say, we're going to own that land in this day and age. But we're finally there, but we have to identify how we're going to own it. Is it like it's the tribal right to own the land, not any one person and not any one owner of parcels, but it is the future of the tribe that really is the beneficiaries of this effort here to regain title to that land. And so it's the SELC team also helping us figure out, how do we hold this land, because we can't afford the taxes on this kind of land either. And so it would be ashamed if we got the land and then lost it to taxes. And so the SELC team worked with us over a couple of years trying to identify, what capacity is it that we could hold it. And we did look at, we have the one nonprofit ICO, the Indian Cultural Organization, that we've had since the 1980s, but it wouldn't prevent the taxes. We would still have to pay taxes even if it went into the nonprofit status. And so through a period of time and a lot of research and stuff, SELC came up with the church status idea. And it's like, wow, that's amazing to me. It's like, oh, now we're going to use a church status. It's like we're trying to revitalize our own traditions and our own culture and our belief systems. And it's like, the church really hasn't really ever helped us do that. But now it's like, oh, maybe this status is the way to help us to, hang on to our own ways and our own beliefs to go into the future. And so that was an eye-opener for me, for Salmon to take on a church status and, kind of pray about that. It's like, because we've been fooled so many times over and over. It's like, okay, you really got to watch for the landmines. It sounds good, but is it? And I thought back on my Grams would talk about her dad way back in the turn of the century, where they were still killing Indians, and they would invite them to these peace meetings. And it sounded like, yeah, let's do that. And then they would, kill the people. It's like, well, that kind of sets a format of like really watching what's happening, what you're getting into, how you can, because so many of our people did fee patent, turn their land to fee patent status and lost it. And so trying to figure out how we go from here so that the future generations can have access to that land and have a right to say what happens to the land, and how do we organize it so that it reflects the tradition and the tribe, you know, because everywhere we live now, you know, trailer parks and apartment buildings and neighborhoods, and everywhere we go to school reflects the society that built that. It doesn't reflect our society. It doesn't reflect the river. It doesn't reflect the salmon, you know, and our responsibilities there. And so this is an opportunity to create that space for our younger people to pick those things up and understand it before it gets lost, before, you know, it's replaced by other things. And, you know, that was the intent of schooling, is to replace our own educational belief systems or responsibilities for those things. But we still have a lot of that left. And this is an opportunity now that I really didn't think that we could do. It's like, we got $200,000. We only have like 2 million to raise. But Nadia is very good at what she does. And lots of people pitched in, Bean and Morgan, and a lot of people who know people. And a lot of young people are in charge of different organizations or different philanthropies, and giving land back kind of is something that's happening nowadays. And that's kind of the miracle that happened here, you know, and it's like we've almost had no time to celebrate that win, that's, you know, it coming together and working with everybody, and everybody pitching in to do the part that they could. But we haven't really had a chance to celebrate doing that and accomplishing that, where now we're just stepping into another big ordeal on the McCloud River for $40 million of 300 or 3,000 acres on the river, which was, you know, the site of the Winnemem fish, the salmon, the nurse. And the reality of trying to you know, even think that is like, you know, we went from the 75,000 for that 7 acres, and then we kind of celebrated that like the miracle happened, and then we stepped into this other for $2 million for 1,011 acres. And it's like, but I think that the prayer journey is like, I don't think that we could do this without prayer. I don't think that we could do this without a belief system that incorporates the duties that we have, and the duties that we have together to make things better for all life. You know, this waterway is that runway for the salmon from the ocean. It's also that runway for all the birds that migrate through this state. And we all have responsibilities for creating a safe journey for them too. And I think that, you know, this land right here is right under Bear Mountain, sacred mountain to the Winnemem tribe. And the land up there on the McCloud is right on the river, and it comes down from William Puyuk. That's where that water comes from, that runs past there. And so it's a very old village. Also, the last village that was occupied that didn't get flooded by the lake. And it was where my grams played when she was a little girl, and her uncles and cousins built the rock house that's there. And so it's got a life of its own story for our tribe too. And so these things, you know, are unfolding, but I don't feel like it's just for the Winnemem, but I think it's the greater benefit of the state.
Thank you so much for all of those answers. It helps illuminate the gift of this collaboration, of this faith walk, of this these efforts. We only have a few minutes left, but there is a question about fundraising. People want to know, how did you fundraise so much in such a short little amount of time? Which I know is a question for Nadia and perhaps another time, but if Anne or Cassandra, you want to speak to that just in like a minute or so. And then I just have a question around for either Michael, you or Chief Caleen, you, just briefly, what's next? What's next for this land? What's next for the salmon? What's next for your community? How are you going to celebrate this? Is that possible? And yeah, we can end there. But and as these folks listen, or as the audience listens, I just want to invite everyone else, just like tune in with your body and feel the sensations that you're feeling. And I want to ask folks to just spend some moments reflecting, since we didn't get to do short or small groups today, just reflecting on, what's moving through you, what's challenging you, what are you curious about, where does your imagination go upon hearing this story? So I want to invite the audience to just kind of like ruminate on that as we have these last few minutes. So Cassandra or Anne, can you just quickly share about fundraising, and then Michael and Caleen quickly about what's next?
Well, I would just say I do think there is a historical thing, a moment right now where there are people who are redistributing their wealth, and there are people on this call right now who could talk about that. But there are people putting their money in foundations. They want it to go to do rematriation and repair, to address the genocide of land and people, to BIPOC, to Indigenous and Black-led projects. That is happening, and there are Chief was talking about the organizations. There's Resource Generation, the Solidarity Network. Those are two that I would name, where people with inherited wealth are taking it and wanting to create transformation with that money. So this was a moment of the coming together of that beautiful opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief or Michael, in the next minute or so, what's next? What's next for the salmon and your community and that land?
Did you want to do it, Mike?
I can. There's many things happening. Of course, building out that land, of course, is a number one at the moment. It's kind of like we're going to be paying our architects and his team and all the people to do the research on the waterways and different plant species and all the things we need to do to build on the land and communicate to the county and all the paperwork that takes. So that's one thing that's going to be going out pretty quickly. We want to do controlled burns on that land too, so that's one of them as well. There's many things for that place, but then we're also doing the salmon restoration efforts still on the McLeod, working on our route around Shasta Dam to restore our salmon routes, working on the New Zealand salmon return, going to New Zealand, doing the studies out there, making sure the studies are complete over here, and making sure that they're not trying to trip us up for blocking the salmon return further, and just doing those negotiations that have been ongoing more and more, and trying to hopefully lessen those up, and getting the salmon back. That's we've been on that since 2004. That continues on into the now and how foreseeable future. So that's a big ordeal. And then from that too, there's many things that are coming back online, but there's also an opportunity for us to get some more land that's currently held in ransom on the McLeod River. And we're going to be working on this fundraising effort. We're hoping to go through the state funds more so on this one, because they have a lot of money locked up for rematriation and for land back issues such as ours. And we feel like we have a pretty good case, pretty good cause to tell the state about how they covered up our land by Shasta Dam and by Shasta Lake, and that we could use some land back from that one, from that was lost from that. And that's a whole whole story that's about to be unfolding right now for us. And just beyond all that, for me, is also the ceremonial upgrading that we're supposed to be doing in the midst of all of this, and the carrying out of sacred places and prayer places that we're supposed to be doing, such as building our roundhouses and not just like keeping our culture, but elevating them like to reflect the times. And so that's a pretty big one, pretty big lifelong kind of thing for us as well.
Yeah. One thing I would add is that this land that we just got, the 1,000 acres, is a place where we can recreate what a village should be, what a village should offer our younger generations. And it's the first time, and probably the only one in the entire state, that would be listed like this, that would, go through the zoning to try to create lands that would be village sites for tribes. Because, like I said, there's trailer parks and commercial lands and ag lands and private lands, but there's no village zoning lands where it creates the collective knowledge of a village. So I'm hopeful for this to take place. Thank you.
Well, we're hopeful with you, and sounds like you're going to be busy for a while. And so hopefully, yeah, folks can find ways to plug in if there are ways to support. We'd love to amplify those requests for support, and just want to wish for all of you a moment of celebration, of just enjoying this moment that has taken years and years of prayer and years of work and years of relationship to come to fruition. And so we're just so grateful for the example that you all embody, and for this win for the land, for the salmon, for the Winnemem Wintu, and for all of us. So thank you so much.